Did IBM just change retirement savings? Hi, this is financial planner Sean Mullaney. Let's discuss. So IBM has been in the news lately. They are making a very significant change to their employee retirement savings program. And let's start off with, what do they have today and what are they going to have when the change gets implemented in January of 2024? So today, what they have is a 401k program, right? They say, hey, employees, you can defer into the 401k on your own. And then we're going to have two employer contributions into that same 401k. One is a 1% non-elective, it's a 1% contribution we make no matter what you do. And then there's a 5% dollar for dollar match into the 401k. So 6% of salary as long as the employee is contributing 5% to the 401k. And all of the investments, whether it's the employee or the employer, can go across the entire plan selection of investments. So, and by the way, a 5% match plus a 1% automatic contribution, that's pretty generous for an American employer. So that's what they have through the end of 2023. Beginning of 2024, they're going to change things, right? They are going to keep the 401k, and employees can still do the deferral. The max is $23,000 in the year 2024, and it goes up to $30,500 for those of us who are 50 or older. But IBM is making a really interesting change. They are no longer doing any employer contribution to the 401k. What they're doing instead is they're setting up a separate program. They sometimes refer to these as cash balance programs. And essentially they're going to say, well, there's no matching, right? We're just going to give everyone a 5% contribution into this cash balance plan. And so it'll get interest rate credits every year, depending on the year. It's a certain percentage based on treasuries. I don't want to go into too much detail on that, but essentially what it is the employees are getting an IOU that later on could either be rolled out to an IRA or could become its own pension, right? So it's going back to a bit of a defined benefit model. And I think there's been a little overemphasis on that when folks are talking about it. So let's step back and think about, well, what does this all mean for the employees and why the heck is IBM doing this? And I'll give you my opinions, and they're just opinions on that, right? So from the employee perspective, they still get to invest in diversified investments. I haven't seen IBM's 401k investment menu, but I'm going to assume that's a large company. They have a relatively diverse 401k menu. So they can still take their existing balances and future employee contributions, which with heavy limits, it's $23,000 if we're under 50 in the year 2024, and invest that, as they've been doing. Okay. But the employer contribution, which is now 5% and it's automatic, say your salary is $200,000, that's $10,000 a year. That basically has one and only one investment, an IBM, essentially an IOU from IBM. It's like IBM is borrowing from their employees instead of from the capital markets. We'll come back to that. So that makes it a fixed rate, sort of a bond type investment. It really is a bond because it's an IOU and it gets interest credits. So that's interesting to me. If I'm an employee, I think about average tenure, and I'm going to link to one source on IBM average tenure, which claims that it's something like 7 years. And look, I don't know. And look, that's just the average, right? Each IBM employee has to think, well, I'm going to be here for 20 more years or 2 more years, or I'm giving my notice in 30 days, whatever their particular situation at IBM is. For those who are only going to be at IBM for 3, 4, 5 years, this isn't the worst development, right? Because at least in theory, they could take their cash balance plan balance, their IBM IOU, and transfer it to a traditional IRA when they leave IBM, and now they're going to be able to invest in whatever the heck they want. Or maybe they're leaving IBM for a competitor, and the competitor has a great 401k. Great, guess what we're going to do? We're going to move that cash balance plan to the competitor's 401k, assuming they accept the roll-in, right? So for many at IBM, what this just might mean is for a limited horizon, you're going to have more of your allocation in bonds. It's a single party bond, right? IBM. But maybe it's not that big a deal. Yes, you went from 6% to 5%. But I think from the employee's perspective, if they're not going to be at IBM for 20, 30 years in the future, this may not be that big a deal. Where I think it's a big deal is from a corporate finance perspective. You have to ask yourself, why the heck is IBM doing this? right? And to my mind, it's not to go from a 6% employee contribution to a 5%. In fact, they may even lose money on that side of it because you got to remember the old 6% was 5% matching, 1% non-discretionary automatic. There probably were some IBM employees, sadly, who didn't capture the entire match. So now they're going to 5% automatic. So from that perspective by itself, to my mind, it's going to be rounding error in terms of what IBM saves, or could even be a little bit of an additional cost. But here's where it really will impact their situation, cash flow, right? So if they're doing 5% into your 401k or 6% into your 401k, you then get to take that money and invest it. That means IBM has to cough up that cash. Starting in 2024, IBM doesn't have to cough up that cash. They're just going to issue notes, essentially. They're going to have an IOU to their employees, and their employees will only start collecting on that when they retire or they otherwise leave IBM and roll the money out. So to my mind, this is a cash flow thing and an interest rate expense thing for IBM. IBM doesn't have to cash flow this expense now until you leave the company or you start taking it as a pension. And they don't have to borrow from the capital markets. They can borrow essentially from their employees at known stated interest rates versus, oh no, the capital markets interest rates are going up. IBM's interest expense on future borrowings is going to go up. So look, it's a change. And look, we always want to be able to diversify our investments. But to my mind, because of the limited time frame that money's probably going to spend in the IBM cash balance plan for many employees, not all, and some may just choose to leave it in there, perhaps it's not that big of a deal from the employee's perspective. Where I think it really could be impactful is on the corporate finance side, where we're improving our cash flow for IBM. By the way, it gives IBM incentive to keep employees around so they can't roll out and cash out. Separate issue. But yeah, I think it's a big thing from a corporate finance perspective because it improves IBM's cash flow and it reduces their interest rate exposure to the capital markets. And IBM's executives are probably saying, well, whatever blowback we're going to get from our employees from making this change is worth it for those two cash flow and interest rate benefits. And I do think for most employees, assuming you're not going to be at IBM for 20 or 30 years, like most Americans, right? Average employee tenure is pretty low in this country, higher at IBM apparently than the country, but still, for them, it matters, but it doesn't seem to me like it's the end of the world. What do you think about this IBM change? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's terrible? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Sean Mullaney. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please mash that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.